Hi, I'm Resham Arden, and this is the Now I Know podcast, where we're raising awareness of different wellbeing topics and breaking the stigma about mental health. With me today is Matt Hearnden, and today's episode is called Now I Know, Therapy is One of the Best Investments You Can Make. Welcome, Matt.
Hello, Resham. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Oh, welcome. Thank you for coming, because I know we would like, can you get to the studio? Could you not? How are we going to do it? So thank you so much for coming, Matt. Really appreciate your time. So for the audience listening, tell us, who is Matt?
Oh, what a question. So currently I work in recruitment. So I'm a senior recruiter. I have been working in recruitment for quite a while now. The last sort of, I don't know, almost a decade at this point, which is cool, but also a little bit scary. And yeah, I think, another thing I'm really, I suppose, passionate about, but really, love talking about is the mental health side of things, right? I think, that's part of the reason why I'm here. That's part of the reason why we want to talk about therapy. But yeah, I'm really, saying you're kind of into it almost sounds a bit odd, almost as if it's like a fad, and I don't think it is. I think we are getting to a position where it's actually becoming mainstream, and it's okay to talk about it even if you're a man. But yeah, so senior recruiter, also very interested in mental health.
Love that. Absolutely. Yeah. And that's why we've connected, because we were like-minded individuals. So, I got to know about you because I saw a podcast from one of my friends, colleagues, mentors, Dynamis EQ podcast. And you did a talk with him. And one thing I really took away was you were really talking really openly about journaling and how you got into therapy. And what I really liked about it was your openness and your vulnerability and talking about it. And my podcast is all about raising the awareness and make it really normalizing therapy. Like, if you're ill, you go to the doctors. Why don't we talk about our mind with other people? So my first episode when I launched this podcast was with Dr. Rina Bajaj, and she's obviously a, award-winning therapist. But I wanted to have this talk from an angle of someone who's actually been to therapy. And you also then did a post. I started to follow you on LinkedIn. And then you did a really lovely post about the things you got from therapy and why people should invest in it. Could you talk a bit more about that post? Absolutely,
yeah. So, the reason I posted it was because I think it was at the time, it was like Mental Health Awareness Week or Mental Health Awareness Month. And whilst I think, you don't, as I kind of said, you don't want to make it into kind of a gimmick, I do think that when those weeks and months come about, it is a good time to post about them if you want to kind of, reach a lot of people and get really good engagement so more people can see it, right? And another reason I did it is because I am a man, and, we men tend to not talk about their mental health anywhere near as much as women do in general. This is why, unfortunately, the statistics around men, taking their own lives are just horrifying, and so that's part of the reason I did it. And as I was kind of saying, off camera, I was like, I don't want to be a gatekeeper, right? Like, I've been to therapy, and I went in total, I think, for about a year, and it doesn't mean I wouldn't go back, by the way, but at that time I felt like I had talked about a lot, processed a lot, and I was like, what, for now I'm ready to move forward and kind of go back into my life. Certainly I would never be against going again because it's been so helpful. I just think it's really important, as you said, to normalize it and to make it mainstream. And it doesn't mean everybody has to talk about their experience, of course, but I think in the past I'd wished that more people had. And then I thought, well, you're somebody, and now, especially then that I had actually gone down the route of going to therapy, and it's not accessible to everybody. Yeah. I understand that. You can get it. Thank God we've got, the NHS and things like that. I did go privately because fortunately I was in a position to be able to do so. And actually it was when I got my new job that it was kind of a present to myself that I was like, I'm going to go to therapy. I'm going to go once a week, all this stuff. And yeah, that's why I posted about it. I wanted to share it. I wanted to share it from a man's point of view. I wanted to share that it was okay. And the response was amazing. I was, humbled.
Yeah. And I saw some of the comments from that post, and you're right, people were really like asking you questions and opening up as well. So what was it that made you, I know you said it was a gift to yourself, but something must have been niggling at you to make you think, okay, I need to deal with this.
Yeah.
What was that moment for you?
Yeah, so it was a culmination of moments, I think. It was, for me personally, there were some patterns in my life that I seemed to be repeating that were not necessarily productive or good for me. So mine in particular was around like relationships, for example. And there was also some stuff around work and career, whether you want to call it procrastination, putting things off, kind of not almost kind of, I could see my potential was kind of there, but it was like I was always seemingly stuck, like, so probably stuck is honestly a good word, in my relationships, in my work. And it really just got to a point where I was like, I can sort of see that this pattern keeps occurring, but I was that much self-aware, but I was like, I don't know how to get out of it. I seem to just keep, even though I'm aware of it, I seem to just keep repeating it. And I was like, you know what? Like, maybe I should talk to somebody about this. And look, your parents, your friends, your partner, whoever, it doesn't mean you don't talk to them about it, and they can't help you, but ultimately they're always gonna have, they're not qualified therapists in most cases, so it's gonna help to have an actual professional who, cares about helping you, but they're not so emotionally invested in kind of all the goings on. And it's like, you don't have to worry about them taking anything personally. You don't have to worry about kind of what you say if you're feeling frustrated with a certain area of your life, So for me, I was like, I had talked to, my parents and close friends and in relationships in the past, but nothing was seemingly kind of getting me past this mark. And I thought, now that I have the means to do so, I want to do something that's really going to help. Like, and it kind of, as you said at the beginning, an investment in myself. It's the same as going to the gym, right? Absolutely. Like, people, no one's really shy about talking about that. Of course I go to the gym, especially guys. Of course I go to the gym, 3-4 times a week, whatever. And I was like, I want to do the same for myself, for my mind, for my mental health. So yeah, really it was the noticing these patterns that were not good for me, that were not productive, but that I couldn't seem to stop doing. And so I was like, let me do something about that.
Yeah. And kudos to you for doing that, because the first step is noticing, hang on, there's a cycle here.
Definitely.
The second thing is noticing and then wanting to do something about it, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then obviously then it's trying to find that help. So did it take you quite a while to find the right therapist? Because I know some people have tried someone, it hasn't worked. Like, what was your process of finding the right therapist? Yeah,
it's a great question. So I did initially try, well, not this time around, but actually a number of years ago, I tried the online only therapy. So it would just be like through text messages, and I think you could do voice therapy. There's some platforms out there that do this kind of thing. That didn't work for me. I was like, I really want to be in the room with somebody and talk to them and have some connection with them and really like let them hear me. So this time around, I was like, that's what I want. I want to be in the room with somebody. I want to be, going 4 times a month, once a week, whatever. I was like, I don't really want it to be something where I'm getting like homework. And what I mean by that is kind of like sheets to fill out or whatever. Like, how, I don't know, how did you feel about this session or whatever? I was like, I want to go there and I want to talk about stuff and I want to process stuff and I want someone to really hear me. Like, that's what I felt would benefit me the most. Now I can obviously, of course, go away after that and think about stuff and reflect and journal, and we can perhaps talk about that a bit more. And actually, so the therapist I ended up going with, Laura is her name, she was probably the second or third therapist that I had talked to. Kind of, they usually offer some kind of sort of 15-minute free consultation, so you can obviously kind of just get to know each other a little bit, because not every therapist is going to be right for everybody, right? And good therapists are very aware of that. They won't pressure you into like, oh, we should be working together with stuff. And actually, for me, I spoke to two therapists who ended up being very different. So the first therapist I spoke to, and I'm not saying she's not a great therapist, but for me, it wasn't right. And she was kind of saying, you know, just to let you know, like how I work is like, if if I think you're, how do I say, like BSing me, I'll call you out on it. Like I will challenge you, you know, I'll make sure you're held to account. And I was like, I get it. And I was like, honestly, and this is in my head after the call, I was like, I am already so hard on myself a lot of the time that that's not what I need. I don't need somebody to be like challenging me. I need someone to hear me. I need someone to listen to me. And again, an actual expert who can hear this stuff and relay it back to me, what patterns I'm making, all this. And Laura was very, I just felt really heard, you know. That was the main difference for me, and that's why I went with her, because not everyone is going to be right for you. So it is very important, and it might take you longer than me. Yeah, it might be 3, 4, 5, whatever. It's really important that you get the right person. Yeah. Otherwise, it's going to be another thing you like have to do, and then what's the point in that? Is you're not going to follow through.
But I do like the way the therapist said, this is my style. So for anyone listening, for the audience listening, if you're trying to look for someone, that's a good question for you to ask them. Like, what is your style with me? Because like you say, if you're, it's the first time, you don't really know, like, is this what they all do?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's such a good point. So yeah, definitely you can ask, and some of them will have some info on their page and whatever, but definitely ask, be like, yeah, what's your style? What's your therapy style? Because some people might really need that. They might think, you know what, I actually, whatever it is, but like, they might think I do let myself off the hook all the time. I need somebody to like firmly call me out and say, Matt, you said you were going to do this. You haven't, whatever. For me, I just needed someone to hear me and say, all right, Matt, so this is kind of what you've said here. Does that sound right? Yes, it does. Have you ever thought about this applying to this area of your life? All that type of stuff. So yeah, really important question to ask. And
I think another thing for the audience listening is like, you don't have to be going all the time. So you said you went for about a year and then you were like, I'm okay.
Yeah.
And so you can decide whether to stop going, like you're in a good place. And also you can always go back and revisit it if you need that. But one of my guests, I think it was episode 2, Maya Rachura, she talked about therapy, like it's mental fitness. Yeah. It's something we should be doing all the time, consistency. But sometimes people do realize like, actually, I've got the tools now and I can do this myself. So it's like I said, it's what you need. And in terms of tools, you also mentioned journaling, which you've touched on. What made you, because I do a lot of journaling, but I know not everyone does it. What was it about journaling that made you think like, okay, this is just something for me? Because it's not for everybody.
No, it's not for everyone. For me, it was, I like writing anyway. But for me, it just helps to, again, similar to just talking about it, although slightly different. It's just getting all those thoughts out of your head and onto a piece of paper, or in this case, a Google Doc, whatever. And for me, I find that really helps, because sometimes when I just write something down, what I've been thinking, I'll be like, oh, that's like ridiculous. Like I don't even, like that was just an unfounded worry or an unfounded thought, where it's like, you know what, yeah, fine, I probably don't need to worry about that one. Or sometimes it will help me connect kind of patterns. Like again, after the therapy sessions, truthfully, sometimes I would feel exhausted because there was so much like emotional release and processing happening. Other times I would be like, oh my God, I just had a really, like, that was such a good insight. Like, I'm going to actually write some of that down. So not only do I remember it, but actually I'll be like, oh my God, that thing linked to here. And my relationship with this part of my life mirrors the relationship in this part of my life. So, oh my God, what an insight that was. And now it makes sense, even if it wasn't good or productive. Now it makes sense why I would be behaving that way. So I think journaling was almost kind of an extra kind of tool in terms of processing. And I still use it now, not all the time, but I still use it if I'm having a particular day or week where I have things kind of, ricocheting around in my head. I'll be like, right, cool, let me get that down onto a piece of paper. It doesn't mean there has to be a resolution, but just let me get it down. So I've like, okay, it's out of my head. It doesn't need to be kind of ricocheting around in there. It's not really helping. So now it's on the paper, out of my head. And that's honestly one of the main benefits.
As you're talking, you know what it reminded me of? Journaling. Back in the day when you let your dear diary.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
a bit like journaling, really. That you're putting your thoughts and your feelings down on paper, but we're just calling it maybe something a little bit different. Yeah. And obviously, mindfulness and therapy wasn't really a thing when we were growing up. So it's
not
like,
that I remember.
Yeah, when I started to write, I was like, it's kind of with the Dear Diary members, but you'd hide it so your parents couldn't see it.
So you're like, nobody can see that. And that's the other thing. I mean, look, again, a journal is a private thing. You don't have to share it with anyone if you don't want. If you want to, fine, but it's yours.
Yeah. Do you know what I actually do with my journaling? So I do it every day, and then when I finished with that book, I actually burn it.
Really?
Yeah, like, you know, people who practice like full moon release, right? Because for me, it's like I'm letting go of it now. What's
letting go of it now.
And then I do like a new one, like when I finish a book. So you don't have to get any fancy books. I just get like a £1 notebook, you know, and then that way so the way it is, because no one's going to see it.
No.
And I feel like I've moved on, and then I just.
And does that fit? Do you get like a release from that? Does it feel like kind of, okay, like you said, it's actually like almost, it's one thing kind of letting it go in your mind, but that's almost like a physical, okay, it's
gone, done, let's move on, let's move.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Because I went on a yoga retreat a few years ago, and there was something I just couldn't let go of. I just couldn't let go of, and it kept playing in my mind. And, you know, the people there said, you know, one thing that's, because there was different techniques we were learning, and one said, you know, you need to write everything down that you really want answers to, but you're writing it to someone who they're never going to read it.
Yeah.
So I must have spent 4 days writing everything I ever wanted to say to somebody.
Yeah.
And then I don't know how it works, but maybe just physically seeing something go helped. But that's something that works for me.
Oh, interesting. I'm going to try that. I mean, I love burning stuff, so you know, why not? Because
also it's a bit like you said, because it's so private, it's something I don't really want anyone to read, and the fact that I've let it go, I know, no one's actually going to read this.
True,
you know,
as well. That's a good point.
It's gone to a safe space, gone to the universe.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think for me, when I heard you talk, and you were talking openly, and then people were sort of responding to your post, what I noticed was because I'm a very open and honest leader in the office, I would talk openly to people about like how I'm feeling or what I'm doing, or I'm like, sorry, I can't do this meeting right now, I've got therapy booked in.
Yeah.
And they'll go, oh my, I love how you're just openly, like how someone's got a doctor's appointment, I'm like, I'm going for therapy.
Yeah, yeah.
And then when I come back, they'll say, I really like how you're just so open about it. And I said, what? But why? The more I can open, maybe to someone else, somewhat open to me. And then what I realised was, there are other people going for therapy, but they're just not open about it.
Yeah, they don't say.
But because I've done that, did you experience anything like that? That now that you're going, did you know I was also going?
I have, yeah, definitely. So I think that's one of the more interesting parts. Is again, like I said, look, I can either sit here and say more men should talk about going to therapy, or I can just do it, you know. And again, it's a cliche thing, but even if it just, you know, one person sees it and then is like, you know what, like maybe it is okay. But yeah, totally, I had that. I had people in my LinkedIn messages, like in the DMs, saying like, I go to therapy as well. It's been one of the best things I've done. Actually, even people on the post, you might have seen like people said openly, yeah, I've been, and it was great. I had people in the DMs as well saying like, I've been thinking about it for ages, but like this is the push I needed to actually go. And yeah, some people who I know, some friends, they were like, hey, I've been as well, or like I'm going as well. And I was like, oh my God, like how have we, and like, so we never talked about this. That's crazy. Like it's one of my favorite things to talk about because again, I do want to normalize it, but again, I just think it's like, I just enjoy talking about it. So I'm not going to be, you know, made to feel, you know, ashamed or made to feel like there's something wrong with me, or there's like, oh, you shouldn't talk about that stuff. No way. It's like one of the things I'm most proud of. Like,
absolutely.
You know, and I think the fact that you're doing it in the office as well, and it's almost like, because you're just doing it so it's not even like, oh, I'm going to therapy. Like you're just saying, hey guys, I'm going to therapy. I'll see you. And, you know, I think probably people were like taken aback, I'm guessing, kind of at first, like, oh my God, like but that's, you know, you do have to, if we're going to normalize it, there are going to be moments of courage to talk about this stuff. It's foolish to think that we're not going to have to, and some people are going to say whatever, there's trolls and this and that, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I think the fact you're doing that is awesome.
So I'll give you guys a technique that I used if anyone wants to do the same thing. What I basically did was, you know, just generally when you're trying to influence change wherever you are, what I said to my my boss was, look, he knew I was going through a divorce. He knew the life I had, but he only knew it when I'd been through it, and he was really shocked. He said, I can't believe you've been through all this adversity, but you're such a high performer. And I said, that's the thing, right? We feel like we can't share our adversity because we might be penalised. But the fact that you can see I've been through a lot, and you know, my mum was going through cancer, she was going through chemo, I was going through a divorce, it was lockdown. And he was blown away. And I said, listen, all I ask for you is, because he said, how can I support you? I said, all I ask for you is, by going to therapy, I'm not asking you to pay for it, but it makes me a great leader and it makes me a great mum and it helps with my performance. So I need you to allow me the time to do it during my work time because it benefits work as well. Yeah. And he was like, absolutely. And it was only once a month. What's an hour once a month as well? So it was really nice because also, you know, being a parent, you're always guilty you're away from the kids. So I didn't want to be doing it at the weekends. That was my time with my family. So I think it was that win-win. Like he's benefiting from a great leader in the office and I'm benefiting by doing it in the work time as well. So that's why I think, and also the fact that I had the support of my manager made me more open to say to people, can we just reschedule this time to 11 rather than 9 so I can come after a session. And the amount of conversations I've had to people, and that's another reason what I talk about in the podcast, like people are like, you have to share your story, you've got to do a podcast because you're doing things. And that's what I said. I said, look, I'm not the only one doing this. I think I'm just more open about doing it, you know? And like you said, like it's just being that role model for somebody, like instead of talking about it, you're actually doing it. And you're sharing your insights, and people are getting so much value from you. And I commented on your post actually, Matt. Like you just have there's so much value on LinkedIn. Like people just helping people. I just love the energy on there. But you're always adding value. You're always giving someone nuggets of something. Like what made you start doing that? I know you said you love writing, but what made you start giving those tips on like?
Yeah, good question. It was a bit of both. So I was. You know, my girlfriend would back me up on this. I was kind of saying to her, I think this was at the end of last year. I'd sort of gotten away from writing. I've kind of done it historically, and you know, done it on websites and things like that, and had actually a little freelance writing business at one point. I was doing copyright and all this stuff, and I was like, I kind of am feeling like the pull to like do it again, but I'm not. I was like, I don't really know what I wanna write about. You know, I was like, I am like really passionate about the mental health stuff, and I do want to talk about it. I don't know, and this is just my preference. I was like, I don't know if I want that to be the only thing. Anyway, long story short, my company I'm working for at the moment, Activision, they ran a workshop on personal branding, and at first I saw it and I was like, no, I don't want to talk about myself like that. I was like, let me, you know, I'm not sure about that. And then someone said they went on it and they were like, yeah, it wasn't like that at all. Actually, it was kind of about, you know, more so sharing your expertise and like what you can offer people. And I was like, well, in that case, like maybe I'll be up for it. And then I kind of thought, didn't you say that you kind of wanted to start writing again and start doing all that? And I was like, maybe. And they specifically were kind of talking about LinkedIn as well. Now, obviously on LinkedIn, you know, a lot of people are looking for jobs, right? I'm a recruiter. So again, it kind of all sort of lined up, these different things. So I was like, you know what? I'll just try it and see what happens, you know. And I had to kind of, you know, I was a little rusty at first. Had to, you know, write a few posts a good few times. But I mean, for whatever reason, they just kind of, you know, took off a little bit. I was just basically trying to think to myself, because all my friends would ask me about it, right, when they were going for new jobs, or if they were looking at new jobs, no matter the industry, honestly, and they were kind of like, what should I do here? What do I do with this? How does my CV look? What do I say in interviews? What questions do I ask? How do I negotiate salary? That's always a fun one. So I was like, let me post let me write these posts as if I'm just talking to a friend. Like if I'm talking one-to-one to somebody, if they ask me this, what would I say? And I was like, because I think that will probably help people the most, rather than like trying to write a post that like appeals to, you know, thousands, millions of people. Just write to one person as if we're having a conversation. And yeah, the first few just kind of, you know, took off, and they, you know, they got a bunch of likes, a bunch of comments, you know, people followed me, my DMs, you know, kind of blew up a little bit, and I was like, maybe there's something here, like maybe this is really, really useful to people. And I was like, well, I'm all for that. Like if I have knowledge that can help people, it just so happens to be, you know, the classic story of being in recruitment is that nobody chooses it, you just kind of fall into it, which is exactly what happened with me. But I was like, now actually I have something of real value to offer people. And that was really it. I was like, you know, and it's called, and people say like personal brand, and like I get why they say it, but I do sprinkle like little bits in there, but I definitely, it's more about how do I help people rather than like how do I talk about me and like, you know, that's, and then I can kind of, you know, sprinkle in the mental health stuff as well, because it's relevant to the job search, because the job search is one of the hardest searches you will do, especially right now. It's really, really tough out there. So it kind of linked in a little bit. And again, when I kind of done stuff around mental health, people were like, you know, you get the DMs, you get the comments saying, thanks so much for posting this. So I was like, you know what, it's sort of all kind of interlinked, and it combined my skills of kind of writing and kind of the recruitment knowledge I have and kind of actually enjoying, you know, social media to an extent. So yeah, just kind of combined everything, and it just sort of started happening, really.
Brilliant. Keep doing it, because you're what you do is brilliant. I've been following you. But I think also, you know, obviously since lockdown and then cost of living going up, redundancies, people losing jobs, are you having more conversations with people about not just their looking for a job, but just their mental health? Does it come up more in the conversation?
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's, you know, for a long time, honestly, like mental health and the job search did not really go... Well, not outwardly did they go hand in hand. I think people might have been really struggling with it, but certainly they didn't talk about it. But yeah, with all these layoffs, with the market the way it is at the moment, like, you know, there's at the moment in most industries, there's way more candidates than there are roles. So even for people who are like really, really experienced and really good, if they've been laid off, whatever, it's just difficult even to get a foot in at this point. And believe me, I wish there was a very simple solution, but that is really causing a lot of, you know, anxious feelings in people. People are getting really down and disheartened, you know, feeling defeated, which honestly I get. Like, I do get it, which again was kind of another... And I think a lot of times people just want to be heard, like, as well as obviously I post the stuff on LinkedIn and actually, okay, if you implement this stuff, you'll have a much better chance. And I get that feedback as well, because that will help if you listen to kind of the tactical and strategic stuff about just getting a job, that will help your mental health, because you'll start getting interviews, all this stuff. But I think a lot of time people just want me to acknowledge, and I've done a couple of posts about this, but basically saying, look, it's really tough out there right now. It's not necessarily you. It's the market is the way it is. Okay, sure, maybe there's a couple of things you could do, but yeah, it's not a conversation that they ever went hand in hand in before. But yeah, a lot of the messages I receive are like, you know, I'm feeling down, I'm feeling desperate, I'm struggling, which is tough, you know. You know,
I know we talked before we started the podcast that it's so nice to just be in a room, isn't it, and just and do a talk connection. And one thing I've noticed is, like, my sister, she finished uni, she's trying to get a job, and everything was a Zoom call, and I kept saying to her, my sister's got such amazing energy. I'm like, they need to see you in person. Like, you on a Zoom call compared to you in a room is very different. But is that now the normal way of people hiring for jobs now, just because of time? Because I just feel more is coming virtual, which doesn't always help people. Yeah,
it's such an interesting conversation. So the answer is yes, because just logistically and time wise, it's often much easier to just for both people to, you know, hop on a Zoom call and get it done. But you're exactly right, in that we're missing the kind of in-person touch. Some roles, you know, are more receptive to doing the in-person interviews, but for the most part, especially because my company and a lot of companies are now hybrid as well, not everyone's in the office on the same days, or they might be in the office like kind of a little bit this day, a little bit next day. So, you know, it would be more difficult to schedule, although still possible. But yeah, I think it's just kind of a time thing. It's an efficiency thing in the mind of companies. But yeah, I think if you're like really good in person and have like a really good energy, like you said your sister has, it's potentially like, you know, hurting you a little bit. If possible, I would push for like, let's do it. I would love to do an in-person interview. I'll come to the office, you know, whenever you need it, within reason, but I'll come to the office. So that's always a question you can ask. I would advise her asking that and see what they say. Yeah,
like I'm available in person.
Exactly. Be like, I'm available in person. Would love to make that work if possible.
No, that's a great tip, actually. So, you know, you mentioned like you're doing all these posts on LinkedIn. Are you going to evolve the content that you're putting out there? Some videos, maybe? What are you thinking?
Yeah, so there's definitely... I do some videos on LinkedIn. I do have and I never thought I'd be saying this, but I do have TikTok as well. So I post a lot on there. I've been posting for like the past couple of months again, because that's like a video only platform. And I was like, that's more of an experiment. Like, let's just see kind of how this goes. I do also now have a newsletter, an email newsletter. It's called How to Get a Job. So no prizes for guessing what it's about. As Tolu said, good for SEO purposes. You know, that's the goal there. But yeah, it allows me to go like way more in depth, right? Like LinkedIn, I think, has a character limit anyway. But on social media, the nature of it, right, is like kind of probably shorter posts. Hopefully, get a bit of value in there, obviously, but. The newsletter allows me to go way more in depth. So each week I kind of tackle a topic. So I've only been doing it for a couple of weeks. The first one was all about how to use self-interest to get a job. We're all self-interested to an extent. I can talk more about that. But then the second one was what not to do in your job search and what to do instead, which was based on a LinkedIn post, which did really well. But I was like, that's a great chance for me to go, because a lot of people said, you know, well, what do I do instead? Or like, oh, can you tell me more about this one? So I was like, great, I'll talk about that in the newsletter. Then I always do a Q&A section as well, because I just can't anymore get to all like the DMs that I get and the comments on the post and all this stuff. I would love to, but this is a great way to do it. So if people ask me a question, I'm always like, hey, join the newsletter, or I'll answer it on there. And a lot of people are asking similar-ish questions. So yeah, it's really, but it allows me to go way more in depth, allows me to give a lot more examples, tangible examples, specific examples, and kind of really, you know, if people read that, my hope is they'll get one useful thing out of it that they can then apply. I send it on a Sunday ahead of Monday, you know, start back again on Monday with a job search. So yeah, that's kind of how it's evolving. Who knows from there? You know, I love doing stuff like this, coming on podcasts. I think for now I more enjoy going on other people's, like we were kind of talking about before. I don't want to do a million different things, but yeah, that's what I'm up to.
Oh, brilliant. Well, good luck with it. I think it will do it, especially with this job market now. And like Tolu mentioned in his podcast, you are like a recruiter with a heart, and I really love that label. That should be your little strap line.
That should be, right, I'm going to say 2 people have said that now, so that's good.
Yeah, and it's going global, let's do this. So I mentioned your post, and there was something you gave about a few tips on like what you benefited from therapy, and one of your things you learnt was about forgiving people who hurt you. And I know a lot of the people I talk to, it's that frustration, and the letting go is that forgiveness. If anyone's listening, what would you say you took away about forgiveness in therapy?
It's such an interesting one, because there's pretty much no doubt that at some point in your life, somebody who you really loved and who really loved you hurt you, purposely or not. That's going to happen and has happened for most of us. So, you know, and it was a couple of things. So one, it was that about like, you know, forgiveness isn't about kind of letting the other person off. It's more about what I want to feel peaceful. I don't want to, you know, I can't remember, it was some Eastern philosopher who said like, you know, not forgiving someone is like, you know, you drinking poison and expecting them to die, you know, and it's just, you're ultimately the holding on to it for whatever reason you're doing it is only really causing you pain. And so I think that's really important. I'm not saying it's going to happen overnight, that it's like, oh my God, it's all just gone immediately. But it's like, it's important to be like, what's the benefit of me holding on to this? Yeah. Because at the moment, there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of benefit, because first of all, it's already happened. Yeah. I'm not saying it was okay. I'm not saying it was right, but it's happened, and it is done. It's over. So what's the benefit of like keeping all this pain and this anger and this frustration? It's a good question to ask. And also, I think I said something in there about like, it doesn't mean that you're going to like have them back in your life and be like best friends again, or like get back together or whatever it is. Like, you can forgive somebody and let go of the kind of the difficult emotions that come with that, but that doesn't mean you're ever going to hang out with them again, or that you have to reach out to them and be like, hey, I've forgiven. Like, that's probably not going to go down well, first of all, but it's up to you. Yeah. Like, you can let go of all that stuff, and you can still accept that I should not have been treated like that. Yeah. That's okay. So that's what I would say to people who are kind of struggling with forgiving someone. Yeah.
And I remember that was something that I was really struggling with, was the forgiveness side of it. And the way I sort of see it is like, by not forgiving someone, you're a prisoner, and you just can't move on. And it's not saying it's okay what you did. It's like, I acknowledge it. I'm not going backwards, but I'm going to move forwards now, and
So
I can let
true.
go. And I think one thing I also realised was they're never going to say sorry to you. So why are you waiting for the sorry?
It's very, very unlikely that that's going to happen.
Yeah.
So you're exactly right. And you give yourself closure, right? It's not about people say, oh, I need closure. And it's like you said, that's, good luck with that, because you don't control them, first of all. And I mean, even if you did, and you made them say sorry, would that make you feel any better? I doubt it. So you're exactly right.
Doesn't change anything.
Doesn't change it.
Yeah, absolutely. So did people notice a difference in you when you went to therapy? Did someone go like, something's different, Matt? Like, what are you doing?
It's funny you say that, because yes, that's exactly. One of my friends in particular, he was like, wow, he goes, you seem really, I told him, I didn't tell everyone at the time, but I told him that I was going to therapy, and he was like, you seem really different. And I was like, how do you mean? And he was like, just more like, just kind of, he said like more confident, I guess, but like almost just more open, like more kind of, verve, more sort of vigor, and just kind of less hesitant, less anxious. He did a great job in describing it.
Yeah,
I
was about to
great,
say.
Nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, and my parents as well. So I told them that I was gonna go to therapy, and again, they were kind of like, you seem kind of much more at ease with yourself, and I think that's exactly how I would describe it, as just much more at ease with myself, and being like, I think I was saying this to Hannah, she's my girlfriend, and she we've been together just over a year, so she wasn't with me when I was going to therapy, but she knows all about it, of course. And I was saying to her, it's kind of like, it's a hard metaphor to kind of describe it. It's almost like if you had this like beautiful house, this like mansion, it was gorgeous, everything, but you hadn't taken great care of it for a while, and there were like cobwebs and like pizza boxes and just dirt and just everywhere, and it's kind of like, so the beautiful house is always there. Still, it doesn't mean it's not a beautiful house. It just means that it needs cleaning up a little bit, and that was almost it. It wasn't like I kind of gained something per se. It was really like more about like, let's just take care of this. Like, let's clean this up a little bit. It's no rush, but like that's what we're gonna do now. Because to say it doesn't take effort to go to therapy and to be in therapy would be a lie. It does. Yeah. And as you know, it takes some courage as well.
Yes.
But yeah, like that's always kind of been there. It was just about the cleaning out and tidying up and taking care of it. So it was less about gaining something. It was more about, letting go through processing it.
That's a really nice way of putting it. Never really heard it that way, but yeah, it's nice.
Yeah.
And I think that's when I say to people, it's like you gave yourself a gift, therapy. You're investing in yourself. It's like personal growth. Like we do a training course, but therapy is also, because they give you like little steps, little tools for your toolkit. So I think if people, like, to normalise therapy, if they saw therapy as personal development, and or maybe labelled it something, not that we should have to, but the more people that open up and people go, wow, like, I need to grow like you've grown. So like, you can run, and it'll be for different things. Some people go for different reasons, but I definitely encourage it. And for the audience listening, if you look at episode 1, Dr. Rina gives lots of ways to find it, which I think is really important, really like that step of going, which I think is brilliant. But Matt, thank you so much for talking about this. Like one of the things I really are aiming to do is getting people to open up culturally, but also men. So, I've got a son who's 9, and I hope when he's like your age, Matt, he's like really open, and I think they will be, because they're so much more open, the younger generation. I think we're the ones who sort of need all that as well. But we have a closing question, Matt. So this episode is called Now I Know. Therapy is one of the best investments you can make. We've talked a lot about what you've learned, but Matt, if you could rewind time, can you describe an event in your past that you would now play out differently with the knowledge and tools you have about therapy?
Yeah. So you sent me this question, I think it was last night, right?
Yeah.
And I was reflecting on it. I was like, I'm not going to answer right now. I was like, I'm going to have a think about it. I'm going to sleep on it. Always recommend sleeping on something as well. And it's funny because I don't know that it would be a specific thing or a specific moment, but quite honestly, it would be whether it was my parents, whether it was my past romantic relationships, whether it was my friends, whether it was just people I came across at school, at college, university. Honestly, I think knowing all that I do now, what would I do differently? I would just treat people better. Like, it's not to say I was ever like horrible or a bully or, you know, like, and I'm sure, you know, some of the people listening to this would be like, well, you're a really good friend or whatever. But I think there were times where, particularly in kind of my past romantic relationships, I have to say, where it was very, very self-centered, like very selfish. And I think that came honestly from anxiety, from fear, from worrying about not being good enough, trying to convince people that I was. And that could come across, I'm not excusing it, by the way, that's just kind of the explanation of it, but that could come across as maybe sometimes I would be, you know, a bit short with them. Maybe I'll be a bit dismissive. Maybe I would withdraw. Maybe, you know, I just would not be fully present. I wouldn't listen to them properly. It would be about me. Like I said, self-centered, selfish. So, and you know, I don't know that there's really anything ultimately more important than how you treat people at the end of the day. And I'm not perfect. Oh my God. I mean, not at all. But I honestly think that would be it. With all the tools I know now from therapy, with the person I am now, I would listen more. I would hear them more. I would accept their feelings more. I would stop trying to convince them to do what I want more. I would not operate from a place of fear and anxiety, but from a place of security and caring about the person and love. Like, I would operate from that point of view. So yeah, really it's about how I would have treated people, and I would have been less selfish, less self-centered, and more caring and loving.
Oh, love that. It's funny you say that. You know, you said I sent you the question last night, and you thought about it, and that's something I'm working on, is not responding straight away.
Oh, interesting.
Because even when it was, you know, in the workplace, like I would sort of be quite. Excuse me? Like, what did you say to my team?
Yeah.
And now I wait because things always look a little bit differently 24 hours or a few hours later.
So true.
And even in personal relationships, I don't respond. I can get a message and I won't actually respond. I'll either respond in 24 hours or I don't actually respond. Sometimes I feel like not everything needs my energy.
It's true. So true. And it's hard. It's, you know, it's not easy to get to that place, because I think there is almost a, you know, maybe it's a cultural thing, maybe it's just a human thing to like want to, you kind of might see some response, maybe you don't like it, it makes you feel angry or scared, and then you're kind of, I don't like this feeling, I need to get it out of me. So you go at the person, or you say something again, like you said, oh man, you look back at it in 24 hours and think, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that. I could have just waited. I could, even if it's like, even just wait, you know, an hour and be like, right, let me just, okay. But yeah, rarely do we make great decisions when we're kind of all riled up and full of emotions, right? So I love that you're working on that. Yeah,
definitely. Like it says, still work in progress.
Of course, always.
Absolutely, always personal growth. But thank you so much, Matt. So let the audience know how they can connect with you. Yeah,
well, thanks for having me, Resham. First of all, this was a real joy. So thank you, honestly, for having me. So yeah, LinkedIn is a great way to do it. So just Matt Hearnden on LinkedIn. I don't know if that'll be in like the show notes or whatever. And then perhaps we can put a link to the newsletter as well. Definitely. So yeah, as I said, it's called How to Get a New Job. Allows me to go really in depth on, you know, is far beyond kind of like, oh, just apply online. You know, we talk about networking, we talk about strategies, we talk about how to write a CV that's going to get you interviews. We talk about how to interview so you're going to get offers. We talk about how to negotiate those offers. So basically everything you need once a week, all the insights you need to get a new job, and that's the newsletter. So we can put a link to that as well.
Oh, love it. Well, good luck with it all. We'll definitely put in the notes so everyone can connect with you and get tips on the newsletter. I know loads of people that can benefit from it right now, so I'm definitely going to give that. But like I said, Matt, thank you so much, and good luck with the journey.
Thank you.
And keep sharing and adding value. Like, I'm following you and I'm sharing your posts as well. I think it's brilliant. But thank you, Matt, and thank you to the audience for listening.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.